Chapter 900. Good. After resting for a while, we will go out and familiarize ourselves with the place. Fangzhou smiled and stood together with the other 7 men. When the 2 male students saw this, they went out and said to Fangzhou and the others, "Let's go. The men live on the other side." Saying that, they led the way in front. After about the time it takes for an incense stick to burn, they arrived at the other side where the male students lived. It was also a row of courtyards side by side. Many of the people who had arrived earlier had already moved into the courtyard. There were also some who were sitting at the stone table under the trees outside the courtyard, or were walking around. When the students saw that there were people coming, they looked at them one by one. When they saw the 6-star emblem on their clothes, the contempt in their eyes became heavier. It turned out that they were actually people from the 6-star academy. The 6-star academy was the lowest-ranked academy among all the academies present. As such, the people from that place could not even enter their eyes. But this time, most of them did not even put the people from the 6-star academy in their eyes, as they felt that compared to them, they were completely incomparable. Here, you can look around and see if there are any vacant rooms. The 2 male students who were leading the way said, and then led them to the area where the male students lived and then left. Seeing the 2 people leave only a sentence and then leave, Xiaoyihan shook his head. Sure enough, the men are not as good as the women. They did not even say a word. Saying that, he walked into one of the courtyards. Just as he was about to go in and take a look, he was stopped by one of the men in the courtyard. Our courtyard is already full. Full? Xiaoyihan was startled and said to Fangzhou behind him, "Let's go to the back and take a look." And Fangzhou complied and also walked to the back. Who would have thought that each courtyard was already occupied? When they wanted to go in, they all got the same sentence, full. After hearing this sentence many times, they could not help but laugh. After walking around, they came to the front of the courtyards. There were 1 or 2 3-star academy students sitting in each courtyard. Seeing them walk around, they raised their chins and looked at them. Fangzhou crossed his arms over his chest and leaned against the courtyard door. With a smile on his face, he looked at the 2 3-star academy students in the courtyard. "Is this courtyard full?" "Yes." The 2 people replied. "All right then. Since it's full, let's do something direct." She rubbed her fists and rubbed them. A malicious smile appeared on her face. "What if you came out on your own? Or should we drag you out?" Although she didn't want to start a fight as soon as she arrived at this place, these people were occupying a courtyard by themselves. Wasn't this forcing them to fight? Everywhere was the same. The weak would only end up being bullied, and even if they were from a 6-star academy, but who among them would be bullied by others? Daring to bully them, this was absolutely asking for a beating. When the people in the courtyard heard this, they were stunned for a moment. They looked at them in disbelief and then laughed out loud. "What did you say? Drag us out? Ha ha ha, just because of your 6-star academy? I'll do it. I'll do it. You guys, do you really think this place is yours?" 1 or 2 people wanted to occupy a courtyard. Since they refused to let him out, then he would settle it with his fists. "Anyway, my whole body is sore from sitting on the spaceship. I've been wanting to move around for a while now." Xiaoyihan shook his arms and walked in. Seeing this, the others also joined in the chaotic battle. In an instant, the empty space was occupied by them. Low growls and the sounds of fists landing accompanied by cries of pain rang out, causing the surrounding students to be flabbergasted. This was because they weren't fighting in a proper manner. Instead, they were waving their fists and fighting in a chaotic battle. One of them threw a punch, while the other threw a kick. Some of them hugged their thighs, while others threw a punch at their faces. The fight was so intense that everyone was dumbfounded. "Ah! Roar! Damn it! Who kicked my butt? Hiss! Look closely and hit. Don't hit your own people. Ah! Damn it, you brat! Don't keep hitting my face." Chapter 902. Bang! Only by punching the face can you see the effect. While speaking, Fangzhou once again punched out, but this time, the punch landed on the stomach of the male student. Poof! The male student cried out in pain. The blow to his abdomen made him bend down instinctively. He lowered his hands to protect his abdomen, but at this moment, another fist flew towards his face. He was so scared that he retreated. Seeing this, Feng Jiu grinned and swung her fist. She turned around and punched the face of the student who was about to sneak up on her from behind. And that person groaned. He only felt that his cheek was punched. His whole person was somewhat dazed. He felt a salty taste in his mouth. He touched the corner of his mouth and took out a tooth that was mixed with blood. Seeing that tooth, that 3-star student sucked in a breath of cold air. You actually knocked out my teeth too? You brat, I will beat you to death. That student was furious. He threw out his tooth, clenched his fist, and punched towards Fengjiu. However, his fist had not yet landed on Fengjiu's body when Nie Tang kicked him away. Nie Tang stood beside Fengjiu. He glanced at her and then looked away. In the scuffle, he was not too far away from her. He was almost 3 steps away from her. When she was punching people, he did not intervene. But those who were planning to attack her from behind were kicked away by him. He did not speak. He knew that she did not want him to, therefore, he only silently stood by her side to protect her. However, Fengjiu did not appreciate it. After another student was sent flying, she shouted, "Enough, don't fight." When the few people from the 6-star academy heard her words, they stopped and shrank to the side. On both sides, it was not only the people from the 3-star academy who were beaten up on Fengjiu's side. In addition to her, Nie Tang, Ouyang Xiao, and Xiaoyi Han, the other 4 people were also beaten to the point that their faces were bruised, but compared to the people from the 3-star academy, their injuries could be considered light, while the other side's face was completely swollen. Hiss. Damn it. Are you really from a 6-star academy? One of the 3-star academy students clenched his teeth as he glared at them. With that kind of skill, they were even faster than them, especially those 4 people. Whoever got close to them would only end up being beaten up. How could they not know that the fighting prowess of the people from the 6-star academy had become so strong? Although it was a chaotic battle, it was almost a one-sided beating. It was too infuriating. He is from a 6-star academy. What about it? Fengjiu raised an eyebrow and glanced at the man who was scared by her. Don't worry, we won't be as tasteless as you. 1 or 2 people occupying a courtyard. We only need 2 courtyards. The rest is up to you. As soon as she finished speaking, she turned and walked into the first courtyard. She saw that other than the 2 rooms on the left and right, there were also 2 rooms in the middle. The 2 rooms in the middle were slightly larger, so she chose the one on the left. When Xiaoyi Han saw this, he was about to walk into the room on the right, but he saw that a figure was faster than him and chose the room on the left. Ouyang Xiao saw that Fengjiu, Nie Tang, and Xiaoyi Han were in this courtyard, so he walked out and went directly to the courtyard next door. He did not intend to stay in the same courtyard as Fengjiu, because in this courtyard, he would see him all day long and would not be willing to be taken advantage of by him verbally. So, in the end, the 8 people stayed in this courtyard. 4 people to a courtyard, 1 person to a room, so they had their own space. Chapter 903. Hearing her door open, Xiaoyi Han also came out and asked, "Fengjiu, do you want to go out? I'll go with you." "Good. Let's call Yi Jing together," she said with a smile, and walked out with him. In the other 2 rooms, Nie Tang stood at the window, watching the 2 go out, but did not follow. As for the students in the other room, they were resting in their rooms and did not intend to go out. On the other side, the mentors of the academy were talking about the other students of the academy. Oh, the students of the 3-star academy and the students of the 6-star academy fought? Yes. Some of the students ran over and said that some of the male students from the 3-star academy had occupied 1 or 2 of their courtyards. Later on, the students from the 6-star academy fought with them and ended up in a chaotic battle. It was a complete mess, and some of the students were beaten black and blue. Looking at it, it was very funny. One of the teachers shook his head and said with a smile, "So, in the end, the 6-star academy lost?" "No, the 6-star academy won, but the 3-star academy lost. In the end, several of them could not stand up, but I did not expect that the strength of the 6-star academy students would be so good." "There is such a thing?" Another mentor was somewhat surprised, and then said with a smile, "This way, it is interesting. I originally thought that this year's ranking would not be interesting, but looking at this year's competition should be very strong. It really makes people look forward to it." Yes. The performance of the 6-star academy students was quite good. They directly beat up the students of the 3-Star Academy. I believe that in the following days, no one will dare to find trouble with them. Let them come in advance and live in our academy for half a month, so that they can secretly compete with each other and also stimulate their fighting strength. I hope that when the time comes, they will not let us down. Oh, no matter what, we will not be able to surpass our 2-Star Academy students to win first place. These few academies matters, let them go, don't worry about them. One of the mentors waved his hand. I still have something to do, so I will go back first. Seeing that the mentor left, the other people also left one after another. On the other side, Fangjiu and Xiao Han came to the courtyard where Yi Jing and Zhou Xian lived. Yi Jing? Fangjiu called from outside, but he didn't go in. After a while, Yi Jing's door opened. She walked out and nodded at Fangjiu before walking to Zhou Xian's room and knocking on the door. Zhou Xian, we're going out for a walk. Do you want to come with us? The door to Zhou Xian's room was also opened. She glanced at Yi Jing in front of the door, then looked at Fangjiu and Lu Yi, nodding her head. I'll go with you. She was unfamiliar with this place, so it was better to have someone from the same academy as her to keep her company. Then let's go, she said with a smile and walked out of the courtyard with her. The four of them walked around together, familiarizing themselves with the surrounding environment. They also heard a lot about the 2-Star Academy from the mouths of some of the students. In the evening, the four of them received a jade strip sound transmission from the vice-headmaster. The vice-chancellor wants us to go over. He said he has something to tell us. Yi Jing looked at them and said, Yes, we received it too. Let's go back and see what's going on. The few of them said as they walked back together. The place with the most abundant spiritual qi in the spirit realm is the place with the spiritual qi gathering array. If you can find it and cultivate there, I believe it will be of great help to you. All right, go back to your rooms and prepare. We'll wait for you outside. As soon as his voice fell, he walked out with the two mentors. When Imochen walked out, he glanced at Fangjiu, as if he wanted to say something, but in the end, he didn't say anything and just followed the vice-headmaster out. Nietang's eyes were cold as he stared at the departing figure of Imochen, and then glanced at Fangjiu, before he turned around and entered his room. Yi Jing, Zhou Xian, do you need to go back to your rooms? If you have something in your room, it would be better to take it with you. Fangjiu looked at the two of them and said. The two of them shook their heads. No, we haven't taken out our things yet. We are taking them with us. Chapter 905. The 10 people came outside. Fangjiu did not want to bring the swallowing cloud into the spiritual land, so he entrusted it to the vice-headmaster to take care of it. The group of people came to the designated place, where the people from the other academies had already arrived. When they saw them, especially the students from the 3-Star Academy, their faces were still bruised and swollen as they stared hatefully at them. Fangjiu and the others did not pay attention to them, but their eyes fell on the 10 people from the 2-Star Academy. There were 8 men and 2 women. All of them were wearing the same white robes, with 2 stars on their robes. Seeing the 10 people, except for Fangjiu, the other people slightly frowned, because the strength of these 10 people was very strong. 8 of them were Foundation Establishment Cultivators. Among the 8 Foundation Establishment Cultivators, 3 of them were Intermediate Foundation Establishment Cultivators, 1 was Peak Foundation Establishment Cultivator, and the other 2 were not Foundation Establishment Cultivators, but they were still Peak Great Spirit Master Cultivators. With such strength, they were really much stronger than the people from the other academies. If the strength of the people from the other academies could compete with them, then it would be the students from the 2-Star Academy. When they were sizing up the 10 people were also sizing up Nietang and the others. After seeing their cultivation, the 10 people faintly looked away, although they did not say anything, but their expressions were full of arrogance. Compared to them, on the side of the 6-Star Academy, except for Fangjiu, Nietang, Ouyang Xiu and Xiao Yihan who were Foundation Establishment Cultivators, the rest were all Great Spirit Masters. Moreover, not all of them were Peak Great Spirit Masters. With such strength, the people from the 2-Star Academy really did not put them in their eyes. The Dean and the Vice-Headmaster of the 2-Star Academy looked at the students in front of them and smiled as they distributed the Spirit Stones to them. These Spirit Stones have a specific mark and belong to our 2-Star Academy's Spirit Stones. Even if you have some on your body, it will not be mixed together. Well, I believe that your headmasters and the vice-headmasters have already explained to you, so I will not say much. You can all enter the transfer array. After entering the transfer array, even the students of the academy will not be in the same place. They will be scattered. The dean of the 2-star academy said with a smile, and let the vice-headmaster open the transfer array and send them into the spiritual land. Go. Be careful. The vice-president and the others looked at Fengjiu and the others. Yes, vice-head. I'll have to trouble you to take care of my little beast. She looked at Tun Yun, who was standing beside the vice-president. Many people had seen her bring Tun Yun along. If she were to directly put him into her space, she was afraid that it would cause trouble. Thus, she could only leave him in the care of the vice-president. I know. The vice-head nodded, thinking that the cloud-devouring beast was just a pet. He didn't know that it was a divine beast. The students from the other academies also gave instructions to the other academies before walking into the transmission array. There were a total of 50 students from the 5 academies, so they were divided into 3 groups. The vice-headmaster and the others watched as Fengjiu's group disappeared into the transmission array before turning to leave. Little thing, let's go. You've been following me since before your master came out. As he spoke, he picked up the round swallow cloud. However, Imo Chun, who was dressed in a white robe, came forward and said to the vice-president, "Leave this little pet to me." This? The vice-president hesitated. Chapter 906. I've had nothing to do recently, so I'll pass the time. Saying this, he carried Tun Yun away. Seeing him leave with his pet, the vice-director shook his head and revealed a helpless smile before leaving as well. At the same time, Fengjiu, who had just come out of the transfer array, felt a force pushing her back. She staggered back a few steps. When she steadied herself and looked around, she saw that it was pitch black and she was the only one here. Thus, she took a deep breath and used her divine sense to investigate. She found that there was no one else within a 500-meter radius. Seeing that the sky was pitch black, she didn't plan on resting. Just as the Vice Academy head had said, the spiritual energy here was extremely abundant. Even the sealed territory enchanting academy couldn't compare to this place. Moreover, she discovered that the spiritual energy here was even richer than in her space. However, the purity of the spiritual energy here couldn't be compared to her space. The dense spiritual energy here is condensed from the spirit gathering array and spirit stones. It's different from the space. However, with spirit stones aiding in cultivation, cultivating here can also increase one's strength. Moreover, we only have half a month here, so there's no need to think about resting. I should hurry up and find the center of the spirit gathering array. She softly muttered and looked around. Due to the spiritual energy in the air, it wasn't easy to find the center of the spiritual energy. Thus, she closed her eyes and used her spiritual energy to sense it. Because she had the purest spiritual energy in her body and had a profound spiritual body, she was more sensitive to spiritual energy than the average person. Thus, using her body and spiritual energy to sense the source of the spiritual energy wasn't difficult for her. However, if it was Nietang and the others, finding the source of the spiritual energy would be a bit more difficult. After a while, she opened her eyes and turned around, heading towards a pitch-black area. Her white figure flitted through the darkness like a ghost, coming and going without a trace. In the same spirit realm, in a different place, the others also relaxed for a while after landing and began to search for the location of the spirit gathering array. In this place, the best place to cultivate was the surroundings of the spirit gathering array. Therefore, the students who came here would automatically search for this place. As long as they reached this place first, they wouldn't have to worry about not being able to meet other students and snatch their resources. However, some people didn't care too much about avoiding the battles because they were confident in their own strength. They felt that even if they didn't avoid the battles, they would still be able to enter the top 10. In the darkness of the night, white figures were moving around, searching for the location of the spirit gathering formation. Compared to the others, Fengjiu already knew the approximate location and was heading in that direction. However, at this moment, a figure suddenly rushed towards her. She dodged to the side to avoid the other party's attack. At the same time, she retreated to open up the distance between them. Above the white robes, there were 2 stars, indicating that he was a student of a 2-star academy. Oomph. Consider yourself unlucky to have met me. Hand over your spirit stone pouch, the male student said in a low voice as he stared at Feng with a sharp gaze. He was a foundation establishment middle stage cultivator, and Feng strength was only at the foundation establishment early stage. Therefore, it seemed that she was really unlucky to have met a foundation establishment middle stage cultivator. However, was she really unlucky? Chapter 908. Hiss. What a huge sum. Such a huge amount of spirit stones. She gasped slightly. Her tone was filled with surprise and astonishment, but her eyes were filled with excitement. This place was the center of the spirit gathering array. If she cultivated here, would she be able to break through again in half a month? Thinking of this, her heart became excited. She was now at the peak of the foundation establishment stage. If she broke through again, she would enter the golden core stage. Even if her spiritual power couldn't break through, her profound strength could still advance. This place is really good. There are so many resources here, but no one said that I can't use them. Then I can use them? She muttered as she squatted down to touch the spirit stones under her feet. Then, she looked at the large expanse of spirit stones. From the center point, there should be a spirit gathering formation laid out with spirit stones within 100 meters. No wonder she had to walk for half an hour in here. I have to cultivate. It's such a waste not to cultivate in such a good place. But before that, I have to set up another array around here. She excitedly murmured and walked outside with light steps. She planned to add something to the surrounding array. This way, even if a student found this place, they could only cultivate outside the spirit gathering array and would not be able to come in and disturb her. Thus, she really did set up an array outside. After strengthening the array outside, she returned inside and sat down cross-legged in the center of the spirit gathering array. Even though it was late at night, under the flickering light of the various colors of spirit stones, the surroundings were bright. A dense aura of spiritual power pervaded from the ground and dispersed into the air. Outside the huge spirit gathering array, there was a thick fog, so thick that it blocked the view of the outside. She sat cross-legged in the middle of the spirit gathering array, but wasn't in a hurry to cultivate. Instead, she took out medicine from her space. This is suitable for advancement. This has the effect of reducing the power of lightning. This can temper the body. She placed several bottles of medicine and pills in front of her, planning to use these things to advance. In this place, the dense aura of spiritual power was the best place to advance. With the spirit gathering array protecting it, she didn't have to worry about the lack of spiritual power. After making up her mind, she immediately began to cultivate. As the origin cultivation method rotated, the surrounding spirit power aura seemed to be stirred. The spirit power aura that was originally spreading outwards rotated in the air and drilled into her body bit by bit. 1 day, 2 days passed, and aside from her, no one else had come here yet. However, they had met in the forest and had also exchanged blows with each other. Chapter 909. At night, more and more people arrived. Once they had a disagreement, they would start fighting. They would fight over spirit stones and resources. After all, even if this was the outer circle of the spirit gathering array, there were many people cultivating here. The spirit chi in this area would naturally disperse and be absorbed. Therefore, they did not want anyone to fight with them. Fangzhou could faintly hear the fighting outside, but she did not pay attention to it. At this time, she was using the Hunyuan cultivation method to absorb the surrounding spirit chi. The spirit gathering array's spirit chi was absorbed by her body and dissolved into it. If it was someone else, their body would not be able to withstand absorbing so much spirit chi, but she was different. She separated a part of the spirit chi to nourish the azure lotus in her dantian. This was the first time so much spirit chi was nourishing the azure lotus. In addition to nourishing the azure lotus, she was also expanding the meridians in her body and gathering the spirit chi in her dantian. She planned to break through to the gold core stage with the help of pills and medicines. As long as she broke through the foundation establishment stage and entered the gold core stage, it would be a good thing for her whether she could enter the peak stage or not. At dawn, the third day arrived. Nietang, Ouyang Xiao, and Xiao Yihan also found the spirit-gathering array. Seeing the students sitting around cultivating, they also planned to find a place to sit and cultivate. After all, compared to avoiding battles, they were more interested in increasing their strength. Then, the three of them each found a place to sit down. The 2-star students who were cultivating closed their eyes and shouted, "Get lost!" The word scram was something the three of them had rarely heard. Among them, Nietang and Ouyang Xiao were both crown princes of 6th-class countries. They were second only to one person and above tens of thousands of people. Since they were young, they had been respected. Who would dare to be presumptuous towards them? As for Xiao Yihan, although he was not born in the royal family, he was also from a noble family. Usually, there were not many people who dared to talk to him like this, let alone people from the 2-star academy. Therefore, when they heard this sentence, the three people's faces sank. "What did you say? Say it again." Ouyang Xiao coldly stared at the 2-star student. His hand was already on the sword at his waist. "I told you to get lost." The man stood up. He was a peak foundation establishment stage cultivator. Naturally, he did not put the three in his eyes. "Chi, what a joke." Xiao Yihan sneered, and in the next moment, his figure swept out and attacked him. His raised palm carried a sharp wind, and with a whoosh, it seemed to have turned into a sharp blade in an instant. "You overestimate yourself." That person snorted coldly and also went up to meet him. He struck with his sword the moment he attacked, unlike Xiao Yihan who was fighting with his bare hands. The sharp edge of the sword slashed and cut through Xiao Yihan's clothes at an extremely fast speed. A trace of blood faintly seeped out. Seeing this scene, Nietang's eyes flashed with a cold light. Just as Ouyang Xiao was about to make his move, he immediately rushed forward. Both of them were peak foundation establishment stage cultivators. Both sides had paid attention to each other and had evaluated each other's strength. It could be said that the 2-star academy regarded Nietang as a formidable opponent, and Nietang also regarded him as an opponent. As for Fangjiu, Nietang had never thought of beating her, so he naturally did not see her as an opponent. Chapter 9-10. As the two peak foundation establishment cultivators fought, the airflow fluctuated and affected the surrounding people. When Ouyang Xiao and Xiao Yihan saw that Nietang was not at a disadvantage, they walked away and found a place to sit cross-legged and cultivate. The two people on the other side fought for a few rounds, and seeing that it was difficult to determine the winner, after a few rounds, the two people stopped. "Even if we continue to fight, we will not be able to determine the winner. You and I will fight in the individual competition," the student from the 2-star academy said in a cold voice, coldly glancing at Nietang, and then found a place to sit down. Seeing this, Nietang also turned around and found a place to sit cross-legged and cultivate. Indeed, if he really spent all his time here fighting, then it would really be a waste of this opportunity. But he glanced around and saw that there were about 20 cultivators cultivating and absorbing the spiritual power aura around them. There were 2 or 3 students from each of the academies, but the majority of them were from the 2-star academy, with 5 of them in this area. But he could not find Fengjiu's figure in this area. Could it be that he could not find this place? Putting aside the thoughts in his mind, he closed his eyes and started to absorb the spiritual qi in his body, temporarily not thinking about this problem. Time passed day by day. The people in this area crazily cultivated day and night. But when the people in the outer circle cultivated for a few days, they found that the spiritual qi in the air seemed to be gradually thinning out, and the progress of their cultivation methods also slowed down. Their bodies wanted to absorb the spiritual qi, but it was as if they were competing with other people. Unexpectedly, it was very difficult. Strange? What's going on? Why is the spiritual qi scarce? I also feel that the spiritual qi is scarce. It seems that the spiritual qi in the air is rushing towards the spiritual qi gathering array behind us. But this is not right. The spirit gathering array was set up by the academy's deans, and there were more than 1 or 2 arrays. Even if the teachers wanted to enter, it would be difficult. What's more, the spiritual energy gathered by the spirit gathering array was released from the inside. How could the surrounding spiritual energy be sucked into the center? Everyone outside was discussing. Even Nietong, Ouyang Shou, and Xiao Yihan were slightly surprised as they watched the spirit energy in the air rush towards the center. However, this phenomenon only lasted for an hour. After an hour, the spirit energy stopped rushing towards the center. However, the spiritual aura in the air was still thin. Could it be that our cultivation speed is too fast and we've absorbed too much spiritual energy, so the spiritual energy in this area can't supply us? Someone asked. If that's the case, then we'll have to wait until tomorrow. I've heard from my mentor that the spiritual chi here will grow on its own. The spirit gathering array and the spirit stones are compatible with each other. Even if the spiritual chi in this area can't be supplied, it will recover after a period of rest. Thus, everyone took advantage of this time to get up and stretch their limbs. Some took out dry rations to replenish their strength, while others were thinking about snatching the spirit stones of others. Chapter 9:11. It is said that this spirit egg fruit blooms every 10 years and bears fruit every 10 years. A single spirit egg fruit can allow one's cultivation to advance by one level. The spirit egg fruit contains spiritual energy and nutrients that can be nourished in the body for half a month. If a mortal eats one, it can cure all diseases and increase their lifespan by 10 years. TSK, it is really a good thing. While she was eating, she was muttering while staring at the spirit egg fruit in her hand. When she went to participate in the pill appraisal convention, she was aiming for this spirit egg fruit because she intended to plant some spirit fruits in her space, but she did not want to plant too many of the common varieties. But this spirit egg fruit, even she did not know where to get it. Now that she had 3 of them, she planned to plant them in the space after eating them. Then she would try to see if she could use the potion to speed up their growth. She was planning in her mind, if possible, she intended to plant one in the Phoenix Imperial Palace in the future, so that her father and the others could also eat this fruit. After eating the spirit egg fruit, she flashed into her space, buried the core in an open space in the space, and watered it with some spiritual water. Inside the space, Old White saw her come in, and excitedly went forward. Master, 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 did you come in to see me? It ran over from afar. This place was like a world of its own. The vast space allowed Lao Bai to run freely in this place. She patted his head and said with a smile, I was cultivating in the sacred land of the 2-Star Academy, so I came in to plant the core. Oh right, when you are here, remember to help me water the flowers and spirit fruits. Master, those spirit fruits that you planted, I don't see any spirit fruits, only trees and leaves, and they are not even half my height. Old White curled his lips and said, his master said that those were spirit fruits, but in his eyes, they were no different from grass, and he did not see any fruits. That is because I planted them not long ago. Okay, I will go out first, she said, and then flashed out of the space and returned to the middle of the spirit gathering array. After stretching her hands and feet, she felt that after eating the spirit egg fruit, her stomach was full, and the spiritual power in her body was also warm and surging, which was very comfortable. There are still 7 or 8 days left. During this period of time, I must break through the peak of the foundation establishment stage and enter the golden core stage, she said as she hurriedly sat down cross-legged to cultivate. As for the people in the outer circle, they rested for a while. Seeing that their spirit force had recovered, they prepared to sit down and cultivate again. Who knew that after sitting down to cultivate for a while, it was as if a powerful force was snatching their spirit force. The spirit force that was about to enter their bodies suddenly turned around and went to the center of the spirit gathering formation, causing them to be dumbfounded. What's going on? Luckily, I haven't activated my cultivation technique yet. If my spirit chi was forcefully snatched away while I was cultivating, even if I didn't die, I would still be seriously injured from the backlash of my chi and blood. A student patted his chest in fear, and cold sweat broke out all over his body. What's in that spirit gathering array? There's definitely something wrong with this situation. A spirit gathering array should be able to gather spirit chi and spread it to the surroundings. It shouldn't be able to snatch the surrounding spirit chi and aura like this. This is definitely man-made. Chapter 9:12. Hearing this, Nietang and the others' expressions became strange because the three of them thought of Fengjiu at the same time. If there was someone who could enter the spirit-gathering formation, it would be Fengjiu. Moreover, they already felt that it was strange. How could the three of them, and even the students from the other academies, find this place? But Fengjiu was nowhere to be seen. It turned out that she had entered the center of the spirit-gathering formation. If that was the case, then they could find a suitable reason for the strange decrease in spirit energy. At this time, Fengjiu did not pay attention to the people outside the spirit-gathering formation. She was diligently cultivating, and the traces of spirit energy happily entered her body as if they had found their mother and merged with the spirit energy in her body. Damn it! If we don't break this formation, we won't be able to cultivate, one person said as he looked at the formation and planned to go in and try again. They also studied formations, but they only knew some of the more common and simple ones. They had never learned this kind of formation that protected the spirit-gathering formation and prevented people from entering. Thus, even if they wanted to try to break it, the success rate was very low. Thinking about this, some students wanted to go in and try to crack it, while others clenched their teeth and decided to move further away from this place. That way, even if the spirit force aura here was decreasing, it wouldn't affect them further away. However, the spirit force aura further away would be thinner, but it was still better than being caught off guard and having their cultivation interrupted. Some students who did not believe in heresy insisted on going in, but after a few people tried, some were trapped inside and could not walk out. They had no choice but to call for help, but unfortunately, no one paid them any attention. Some walked out dejectedly after trying a few times and cursed in a flustered and exasperated manner. In the end, they flung their sleeves and left. Seeing this scene, Nietang's eyes moved slightly and his gaze fell on the depths of the spirit-gathering formation, the place isolated by the fog. Was she cultivating in there? She was the only one who could leave so many people at a loss. His heart sunk. An indescribable feeling welled up within him. He could only quietly turn around and walk to a place a little further away to cultivate. Ouyang Xiu pursed his lips and stared at the mist. He asked Xiaoyihan beside him, "Is Fengjiu inside?" He. Didn't I hear that you lost to her and acknowledged her as your master? How can you call master by his name? Xiaoyihan looked at him mockingly. When he saw Xiaoyihan's face darken and he flung his sleeves to leave, he couldn't help but rub his chin. His gaze fell on the fog, and he shook his head. This scourge. Sighing softly, he could only turn around and walk further away. If he was too close, he would really be harmed by her. However, he could not walk too far away. At least when she came out, he would still be able to see her. Time passed, and the days inside seemed to pass peacefully. Because it was getting closer and closer to the time to leave, the competition between the students became more intense. Chapter 9:13. What's going on? What's going on? Why is the spiritual power flowing back? The people in the forest were extremely surprised. The people who were originally cultivating stood up and followed the spiritual power flowing back. They wanted to know what was going on. Even the students who were fighting for the spirit stones could not help but stop and follow them. They wanted to know what was going on. Why did the vitality of the trees here seem to be decreasing? Everyone was shocked. They could not help but shout and speed up their search. This was the secret territory of the Two-Star Academy. It was the holy land of cultivation for the Two-Star Academy. A huge amount of spiritual power was used to arrange a huge spirit-gathering array. This place had existed for hundreds of years, but such a thing had never happened before. Unlike the people who came from other places in the secret territory, they had not gone far. They were cultivating not far from the spirit-gathering array. When they saw this scene, they were very calm. Because after they found that there were people inside, this kind of phenomenon appeared once every 2 or 3 days. It was as if the spiritual power was sucked dry by a vampire in an instant. There was not even a little bit of spiritual power in the surrounding area. They had already moved out, and moved out even more. They had already moved out from the 100 meters to a few hundred meters away. From the initial shock, anger, and disbelief to now, they were able to calmly look at all of this. Wasn't there an evildoer who was cultivating inside? They did not know which academy's evildoer was, but he actually passed through the layers of spirit arrays to reach the most central point. Humph! They were waiting here, waiting for that scourge to come out and ruthlessly beat him up. Otherwise, it would be difficult to quell their anger of having their spiritual chi snatched away. Strange. Why is today different from the usual? Some people said, looking at the surrounding spiritual power flowing towards the center of the spirit gathering array. Even the vitality of the surrounding trees was being snatched away. They could not help but feel surprised. When Yeteng, Ouyang Xiu, and Xiao Yihan saw this scene, they also stood up. Looking at the center of the spirit gathering array, they were shocked. Yeteng and Xiao Yihan knew that Fengjiu was abnormal. Although they were shocked by this big movement, they also knew that every time Fengjiu advanced, it would be abnormal. However, she had only reached the peak of foundation establishment last year. Could it be that in less than a year's time, she was going to advance again? If she really was going to advance, then this time, she would have entered the golden core stage. As for Ouyang Xiu, when Fengjiu was killed last time, he did not know anything. Therefore, when he saw this movement, he was shocked. He thought that Fengjiu was cultivating some evil technique. Otherwise, not only would she be able to absorb the surrounding spiritual power, but why would she not even let go of the vitality of the trees in here? Hey, I knew she was a scourge. The spiritual power is disappearing so quickly, and even the vitality of the trees is being sucked away. This mystic realm won't be destroyed, right? If it's destroyed, then it will be troublesome. Xiao Yihan stomped his feet and paced back and forth. He was a little anxious and uneasy, but more than that, he was full of admiration and admiration. Chapter 9:14. That Fengjiu. What kind of demonic technique is she practicing? Ouyang Xiu hesitated and asked the question in his heart. Demonic technique? Xiao Yihan was stunned, then laughed out loud. She's about to advance. Just look at the commotion. She's about to advance. Just watch. She'll definitely break through before tomorrow. Hearing this, Ouyang Xiu frowned. I heard she only reached foundation establishment last year. Yes, peak foundation establishment. He nodded with a smile. From the looks of it, do you think she'll break through to the golden core stage here? Impossible. He rejected the idea without even thinking about it. Hearing this, Xiao Yihan was dissatisfied. Why is it impossible? I think it's very possible. Entering the golden core stage is not the same as entering the foundation establishment stage. Who would dare to casually break through to the golden core stage if they don't have complete confidence? If something goes wrong, they might fail to form their golden core. If it's light, their cultivation will be severely damaged. If it's heavy, they might die. Ouyang Xiu said coldly. It hasn't even been a year since he entered the foundation establishment stage. How can he break through to the golden core stage? Furthermore, foundation establishment requires foundation establishment pills. Breaking through to the golden core stage requires even more pills or medicines. Whether it's strength or medicines, he can't lack either. Xiao Yihan rubbed his nose and didn't say anything. Because of this, he saw the color of the sky suddenly change. Even though it was evening, the speed at which the sky darkened was too fast. Also, the spiritual aura that was rushing into the spirit-gathering formation seemed to be directly sucked in. Even the originally withered leaves on the trees and weeds quickly withered at this moment, and the tree's vitality was completely gone. Hiss. He sucked in a breath of cold air. Looking at the huge change in the surroundings, he broke out in a cold sweat. This is troublesome, troublesome. She can't be thinking of sucking in all the spiritual aura here, right? Niateng frowned slightly. Looking at the changes in the sky and the rotation of the surrounding spiritual aura, his eyes flashed and he walked forward. Fengjiu, who was in the spirit-gathering array, was flushed red. The surrounding spirit chi rushed into her body, accompanied by traces of green vitality. Part of the spirit chi was absorbed by the green lotus, while the rest of the green vitality was absorbed by the green lotus. The green lotus, which was originally sitting quietly in her dantian, began to rotate, greedily absorbing the spirit chi that was rushing into her body. Her veins were bulging, and spiritual power was gathering in her dantian. She could feel that the opportunity to advance in her body was about to break through. She opened her eyes, picked up the medicine and pills in front of her, and swallowed them together. She stopped running the technique and guided her spiritual power to break through the last threshold to the peak of the Foundation establishment realm. Boom! In the sky, the surging clouds rolled like mushroom clouds above the spirit-gathering array. Muffled sounds of thunder spread throughout this small world, shocking the students of the other academies to the point that they were dumbfounded. Heavenly lightning. Oh my God! Why is there heavenly lightning in here? Damn it! Could it be that someone was advancing in here? And it even caused such a huge commotion? Do you want to destroy the secret territory of our 2-star academy? Chapter 9:15. Following the flow of air, they looked at the rolling clouds in the sky. Even though they could not fly on their swords, they quickly arrived outside the circle of the spirit-gathering array. There, almost all the students from the various academies had already gathered. Each and every one of them was dumbstruck as they looked at the rolling clouds in the sky and listened to the muffled sound of thunder. Fuck! Which bastard is this? God damn it! How did he get inside? Damn it! The surrounding trees have all withered. Boom! Just as everyone was cursing, the sky rumbled as a bolt of lightning struck down. The power of the lightning was so great that it made everyone break out in a cold sweat. Fuck. This is not Foundation establishment. This is a golden core. Someone is forming their core inside. When these words came out, the surrounding people all sucked in a breath of cold air. Core formation. Among these students, there was actually a core formation cultivator. Almost immediately, everyone's gaze turned towards the students from the 2-star academy. Their gaze seemed to ask, is it someone from your 2-star academy who is advancing? Is it someone from your 2-star academy who is forming their core inside? What are you looking at? Can't you see that the 10 of us are here? A student unhappily roared. He angrily glared at the other students and said while clenching his teeth, "Let me know who it is. This young master will wear his skin." Chi, you are just a Foundation establishment cultivator. Do you think you can beat someone who is advancing to Golden Core? Xiao Han crossed his arms and sneered. That 2-star academy sneered. Core formation? Ha 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 ha. Do you think that core formation is so easy? I think that this person will not be able to form his golden core. Maybe he will not be able to withstand the tempering of the heavenly thunder and fall. You have fallen, but she has not fallen, Xiao Han said, ignoring him. Instead, he paid attention to the movement of the clouds in the sky. Because of the fog, they couldn't see what was going on in the center of the formation. They could only faintly see the air currents flowing out from the inside. At the same time, 2 cries for help came from the formation. Help! Save me! Save us! As it turned out, the 2 students who were trapped inside had yet to come out. Originally, they thought that even if they were trapped inside, they would naturally be transported out when the time was up. Thus, there was no need to be anxious. However, when the first bolt of heavenly lightning struck down from the sky, the pressure and airflow that surged out from the heavenly lightning were all Jindan auras. It was not something that they could withstand. Therefore, the 2 of them started to panic and started to call for help. However, no one went in to save them because they were not confident that they could enter the formation and walk out. Moreover, the 2 of them were not anyone to them, so why would they take such a risk? Help! Help! Ah! The cry for help was accompanied by a cry of agony. It was as if the person had been injured by the airflow or attacked by the pressure. In any case, the students outside couldn't see, so they couldn't help. Boom! The second bolt of heavenly lightning struck, and the ground shook. As the heavenly lightning struck, the flow of spiritual energy and life force continued to flow towards the center. The 2 people trapped in the formation screamed again and again. Chapter 9:16. The power of the second bolt of lightning was even greater than the first. Almost at the same time that the airflow and pressure of the second bolt of lightning spread out, The two miserable students trapped in the formation had already fainted from their injuries. At this moment, everyone outside held their breaths and stared at the rolling clouds in the sky, guessing if the third bolt of lightning would strike. If the third bolt of lightning struck, then, thinking of this, everyone's hearts were in their mouths. Could there really be a golden core cultivator among them? The most despicable thing was that they still didn't know which academy this student was from. They didn't know who the person inside was. However, this time, the third bolt of lightning didn't strike after a while. The people outside had been waiting and watching with bated breaths. As the sky gradually darkened and night fell, no one left. No one forgot to fight for other people's spirit stones. They all stared at the sky, wanting to know if the bastard inside could successfully form his core. This wait lasted from night until dawn. Not only did the people outside feel uncomfortable, even Fangio, who was inside the spirit gathering formation, felt uncomfortable. Her meridians felt as if they were about to break due to the frantically surging spirit force. She could even hear cracking sounds coming from her meridians and bones. This feeling made her feel as if she was close to death. It was as if she couldn't cross this hurdle, she would die. But at this time, no medicine or pills could help her. The only thing that could help her was to get through this hurdle. Only by getting through this hurdle could she step into another realm. She gritted her teeth and channeled all of her power into her body. The aura of her spiritual power instantly rose to a height of more than 10 meters. At that moment, the aura of her spiritual power turned into flames. The raging flames surrounded her body and burned her clothes to ashes in an instant. Naked, she sat cross-legged in the middle of the spirit-gathering array. Her eyes were tightly shut, and a green lotus was faintly visible between her eyebrows. Bits of green light mixed with bits of golden light danced, and the green lotus seemed to be about to bloom, faintly discernible. Her ink-black hair fluttered in the flames in the airflow. The raging flames seemed to be tempering her body, making whistling sounds. It was also at this moment that a rumbling sound came from the sky. A bolt of heavenly lightning that was several times more powerful than the previous two bolts of heavenly lightning struck down from the sky. Boom! In an instant, it was as if an earthquake had struck the entire sacred ground. The students standing outside the spirit gathering array only felt the ground shake violently, and they couldn't even stand still. The sudden upheaval made them dizzy, and they fell to the ground one after another, unable to stand up. Hiss! Look! Someone sucked in a breath of cold air, only to feel that the entire air was distorting. Looking around, the trees and weeds were withering one after another, and even in the distance, they were withering at a visible speed. The entire green holy land of the mystic realm seemed to have been drained of vitality in an instant, turning into a withered forest. Chapter 9:17. What is going on here? The dean of the Two-Star Academy was startled for a moment and ordered, "Investigate. See what is going on here." "I'll immediately investigate," a mentor of the Two-Star Academy replied, but unexpectedly, before he could go outside, he saw two old men flying in the air. Their speed was very fast. Almost in the blink of an eye, they arrived in front of the dean. When the dean of the Two-Star Academy saw the two of them, he could not help but be surprised. "Why are the two elders here? Something happened in the sacred land of the secret realm, and you are still here asking why are you here?" The two elders said with a sullen face. Glancing at the teachers of the various academies, they flicked their sleeves and turned towards the direction of the transmission array. Hearing the words of the two people, not only the people of the Two-Star Academy were surprised, even the people of the other academies were also surprised, and quickly followed them towards the direction of the transmission array. The secret realm was the sacred land of cultivation. How could something happen? If something happened, then what was the matter? Even the two elders of the Two-Star Academy were alarmed. At the same time, in the secret realm, the people outside the spirit gathering array were all stunned. One by one, they looked foolishly at the lifeless trees around them. Their mouths were wide open, but they did not know what to say. After the 3 bolts of heavenly lightning, the clouds in the sky finally dispersed, and the blue sky and white clouds were restored. If it wasn't for the forest below that looked like a ghost forest, The air without any aura of spiritual energy, and the lifeless trees. They really would have thought that the previous scene was just an illusion. However, in the middle of the spirit-gathering array, Fengju lightly exhaled, and the spiritual power in his body returned to his dantian, and at this time, his dantian had successfully formed a core. What made her pleasantly surprised was that the blue lotus finally slightly bloomed, and a petal bloomed, although it was only a petal, but it made her very happy. Seeing that her clothes were burned by the flames, immediately, she quickly took out another set of clothes from her space and put it on. After putting on the clothes, she lightly exhaled, and felt that her whole body was different. She had just entered the golden core stage, although she had not reached the peak of the golden core stage, but her strength had advanced from the early golden core stage to the intermediate golden core stage, which was beyond her expectations. Also, with so much spiritual power nourishing and assisting her, and with the help of medicines and pills, if she could not advance, then it would be too wrong. I entered the Gene Dance stage in less than a year. I think the Yuanying stage won't be too far away from me. She was in a good mood as she spoke. She stretched her back and rubbed her shoulders. She thought about how half a month had passed, and she had only managed to snatch 10 spirit stones. That was too little, so she decided to go out and take a look. Thus, she walked out briskly. However, when she took her first step, she noticed that the spirit stone under her feet was dusty. It was as if the spirit stone's aura had been squeezed dry. Although it wasn't completely exhausted, it looked like it was almost done. The surrounding spiritual energy seems to have decreased quite a bit. She muttered softly and looked around. Because of the fog, she couldn't see the outside, but she could feel that the spiritual energy in the air wasn't reduced by a lot like she said. Instead, it was almost completely absorbed by her. Chapter 9:18. While she was thinking, she walked outside, passing through one array formation after another. When she arrived at the outermost array formation, she saw a figure covered in blood lying on the ground, unconscious. She could not help but be surprised, and stepped forward to call out, "Hello?" Seeing that there was no movement, she squatted down to check his pulse. Seeing that he had fainted, she intended to step over him and leave. However, when she caught a glimpse of the spirit stone bag on the student's waist, she could not help but laugh. "Okay, I'll be a good person." With a flick of her hand, she took the bag of spirit stones and stored it in her space. Then, she lifted the unconscious student up, intending to carry him out. Unexpectedly, after walking for a while, she met another student who was also unconscious and had wounds all over his body. "Huh, there's another one?" She raised her eyebrows, and after calling out to him, she saw that he did not wake up. So she directly took his spirit stone bag, and with one hand dragging the other person, she directly went out. Sha sha, sha sha sha. This was the sound that the students outside the spirit gathering array heard. It seemed that something was rubbing against the ground, making a rustling sound. Listening to the rustling sound, they could not help but feel fear in their hearts. Was that person coming out? Was the person inside really one of their students? But how come they did not hear any footsteps? Instead, it was that rustling sound? Until they saw Feng Nine, who was dressed in white, walking out with 2 people in her hands. They were all dumbfounded. Huh, they're all here? Outside the array formation, she saw the students standing not far away. She was somewhat surprised, but smiled and greeted them. Especially when she saw Ouyang Xiao and Xiao Yihan standing not far away, she raised a big smile on her face. "You two are also here?" As she spoke, she loosened her grip on the 2 people she was dragging, causing them to fall to the ground with a loud thud. Seeing the 2 unconscious students covered in wounds caused by sharp blades, the crowd couldn't help but swallow their saliva. Pairs of eyes stared intently at the youth who was walking towards them with a smile on his face. 6-Star Academy? He was actually a student of a 6-Star Academy? This person was actually at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, and now he was directly promoted to a golden core stage cultivator? This simply made them speechless. Before the other party came out, they thought that when he came out, they would definitely give him a good beating. But when he came out, each and every one of them was dumbfounded. His cultivation was at the golden core stage, and he was completely unscathed. He was even dragging 2 unconscious students in his hands, and he walked out of the spirit-gathering array so calmly and casually. He even smiled and greeted them. Chapter 9:19. While speaking, he gestured to her to look at the withered trees around them, with a look of interest on his face. How did you advance in the end? You actually absorbed all the spiritual chi here, and even the vitality of this place was cut off by you. TSK, this movement is really not ordinary. Fangjiu at this time also noticed the trees around them. When she saw those withered trees, she could not help but be dumbfounded. How could this be? I just cultivated. How could these trees become like this? She was somewhat speechless. Her heart was getting more and more empty. This area was originally green. But now, not even a single green leaf could be seen, and the trees were all withered. The spiritual chi in the air was scarce. She did not say anything about it. But how could the vitality of these trees be reduced? How is it? Didn't I say that you were in trouble? This is the secret territory of a 2-star academy, a holy land for cultivation. To cause such a disturbance, I'm afraid. Alas. He shook his head and sighed. He felt that this matter would not be so easy to solve. After all, this was the place of a 2-star academy. If they were students of a 2-star academy, then it would be fine. But unfortunately, they were students of a 6-star academy. Anyone who saw their own place destroyed like this would definitely jump up in anger. This, I also. She was terrified in her heart, but before she could finish her words, she saw more than a dozen figures appear in front of everyone. Seeing more than a dozen figures, Fengjiu's scalp went numb. Hiss. What the hell is going on here? The dean of the 2-star academy looked at the withered trees around them, as well as the withered spiritual chi. He could not help but suck in a mouthful of cold air. He could not believe what he was seeing. In addition to the dean and vice dean of the 2-star academy, there were also their 2 elders, as well as the vice dean of each academy. Now, when everyone saw the situation inside, they were all stunned. They could not believe it. The spiritual chi in here, looking at the scene inside, everyone was speechless. Even if they were from other academies, they knew the importance of this sacred cultivation ground. But now, the students of these academies had only been here for half a month, and there was not even the slightest bit of spiritual energy in this place. Moreover, even the vitality of the trees here was gone. Such a scene was simply like a natural disaster, and the destruction was inconceivable. Only the vice-headmaster of the 6-star academy, Old Manguan, after he came in and saw the scene, he immediately looked at the surrounding students of the 6-star academy. His eyes swept past several students, and when his eyes fell on Fengjiu, who had a guilty conscience, he could not help but take a deep breath, as a bad premonition arose in his heart. If there was anyone here who had the ability to cause destruction, it would definitely be Fengjiu, especially when she looked a little apologetic and a little guilty at this time. When he saw this expression in front of him, he just wanted to shout to the heavens. Was it really her doing? What the hell was she doing in here? He actually squeezed the rich spiritual energy out of this place? Even the life force in this area was destroyed? If this was really her doing, then how could he explain it to the deans of the 2-star academy? Who is it? Who did it? Who the hell did it? The angry face of the 2-star academy's dean became strange because of Fengjiu's words. You said that you were cultivating here, and then in just a short 15 days you advanced from the foundation establishment stage to the Jindan stage? Under their angry gazes, she replied embarrassedly, Yes. Dean, you have to believe me. I really didn't expect it to be like this. Really, I didn't purposely squeeze out all the spirit chi here. I heard that the spirit chi here will continue to condense, so I didn't have any scruples. Not long after they left, a whirlpool appeared in front of Fengjiu and the others. The whirlpool seemed to have a powerful suction force that sucked everyone in. At the same time, Yijing and the others who were cultivating in a place further away from the secret realm were also taken away. When everyone appeared outside the transmission array, the teachers of the various academies glanced at Fengjiu and asked the students to register the number of spirit stones, and then brought their respective students back. As for the vice headmaster of the 6-star academy, Old Man Guan, he sighed and said to Fengjiu, "You come with me to the main peak." As his voice fell, he turned around and walked away. Chapter 922. Seeing Fengjiu leave with the Vice Academy head, Yijing was startled. She walked over to Xiao Yihan and asked, "What happened to her?" Xiao Yihan glanced at her and asked with a smile, "Didn't you feel it when you were inside? Did the aura of spiritual energy decrease?" Yijing paused for a moment before replying, "I was cultivating in a cave inside and didn't come out, so it was like that. No wonder you didn't know. Let's go. We'll talk as we walk." He gestured for her to follow him as he explained what had happened inside. On the other side, Fengjiu followed the vice-chancellor to the front hall of the main mountain. She looked at the dean, who was sitting at the head of the table, and the 2 elders below him. Under the vice-chancellor's signal, she stepped forward and bowed. Fengjiu greets the dean and the 2 elders. "Fengjiu, do you admit to your crimes?" The dean asked in a calm voice, his sharp gaze fixed on the people standing in the hall. Hearing this, Fengjiu blinked. "I didn't commit any crimes. You can't be condemning me just because I exhausted too much of the spiritual energy in the secret realm, right? When we entered the secret realm, you all said that I had to cultivate diligently inside. Is it a crime for me to cultivate diligently and break through?" Her voice was filled with dissatisfaction as she angrily said, "I admit that I'm very sorry for exhausting the spiritual energy inside, but if you want to convict me just like that, I won't accept it." "Pa." An elder angrily slammed the table. "You still think you're in the right? Do you know that because you've exhausted the spiritual energy inside, you won't be able to cultivate for the next few years? Just recovering the vitality inside will take a year or 2. There's also the spirit stones that have been consumed. Do you know how much damage this has caused to our academy? You can't blame me for this. I didn't think it would turn out like this." She calmed her tone and felt that no matter how she said it, she couldn't get away from the fact that the other party had caused them to suffer losses. "Ha ha ha, Dean, elders, please calm down." The Vice Academy head hurriedly stepped forward with a smile. "Getting angry won't solve the problem. It's better to calm down and think about how to solve the problem in front of us." "How to solve it? How do you want to solve it?" "The spirit stones inside have been used up. I'm afraid that the spirit gathering array won't be able to operate for a few years. You said that this sacred cultivation ground has become like this because of him. If you don't say this, I will look for you. Your 6-star academy has to take this responsibility." Hearing this, Fengjiu looked at him strangely and said, "Are you an elder of a 2-star academy? Why are you acting so shamelessly?" "Shut up. Don't make trouble." "Elders, the academy head, elder and the academy elders and the academy elders." She cleared her throat and said, "I can stay as a teacher, but 3 years is too long. 1 year, I only agree to stay for 1 year." She stretched out a finger and waved it. Her eyes narrowed into slits as she spoke. 1 year? 1 year is too short, at least 2 years. The 2 elders said, "No, 1 year. I only agree to 1 year." Director Xiao looked at Fengjiu as if he had entrusted him with a heavy responsibility. He had a look that said, "I knew you could do it," which made Fengjiu speechless. It can't be, right? Let her teach those troublemakers? Wasn't this just looking for trouble? As for the treatment of the mentors, you do not have to worry. You will be treated according to the mentors and will not be given less than half a point. But after a year, I hope to see some changes in those troublemakers. Can you do it? Chapter 925. It's all right. I believe you can do it. However, before that, there's something I need you to do as a mentor. He looked eagerly at Fengjiu, who was sitting below. There was a faint joy in his eyes that could not be concealed. Fangzhou couldn't help but find it strange, asking, "What is it?" "It's like this, you see. It's already the 5th month, half a year has passed since school started. But there are still some students who haven't returned, so." He looked at him earnestly, his meaning obvious. "So?" Fangzhou was a little confused. She looked at the dean, asking, "If these students don't return to the academy to cultivate, do we have to go and find them? If we really have to go, why haven't the teachers gone after half a year? Why are you only saying this now?" "Didn't I just say it? Some of the students in this academy have a special status and are doted on by their families. Those students' families didn't listen to them, so they handed this matter to our academy to handle, saying that our academy is a place to teach students, and we pay so much tuition every year, so this matter should be handled by us. Since that's the case, why don't we just expel them? Let them find another academy, or let their families teach them themselves. For these students who don't even want to learn, it's like forcing them to drink water. It's useless." Sigh. The dean sighed, shaking his head without saying anything. It was the elder at the side who explained, "Fangzhou, you don't know about this. Our academy does have the right to choose students and decide whether to let them in to cultivate, but there are exceptions." He stroked his beard and said, "You may not have heard of the 8 great empires, but below, there are some royal families and families whose ancestral bloodlines are in the 8 great empires, and those who are able to establish themselves in the 8 great empires are all extremely powerful, even we can't be unscrupulous. Moreover, the families of our academy students also have great expectations for them, but because of their unusual background, their behavior, there are some problems. But because they have achieved a certain level of strength, they can enter the 8 great empires through the selection of the sects above. Thus, their families have no choice but to send them to the academy. Don't be fooled by the fact that they are all from second-tier countries. In fact, with their families' power and status, even people from first-tier countries have to give them some face and not dare to offend them directly. In that case, the thorns you spoke of earlier are these?" Fangzhou was speechless. This was the first time that she had heard of such a thing. It turned out that the clans and forces of the 8 great empires were also under the protection of the 8 great empires. It was no wonder that even the dean of the 2-star academy could not do anything to those students. The dean nodded. "Yes, that's right. It's them. Actually, there aren't many of them, just 4 of them. It's just that each of them is too difficult to deal with." It was precisely because they were too difficult to deal with and their ability to cause trouble was not small. Therefore, when they saw this Fangzhou enter the sacred land of the mystic realm for only half a month, they intuitively felt that he was the same as the other 4 people. Cough, cough. Of course, he couldn't say this out loud. It was enough for him to keep it to himself. The problem was that as long as he could solve it and suppress those 4 people, it would really be a great help to them. "Do I look like something's wrong?" She raised her eyebrows and glanced at him. "It doesn't look like it." He grinned and said, "It's incredible. You've become a golden core cultivator in just one trip. Your advancement speed is too abnormal." "Fangzhou, have you really become a golden core cultivator? How did you successfully advance in there? It's said that it's not easy to enter the Jindan stage. How did you form your gold core in such a short time?" "That's right. Tell us about it." Chapter 9:27. Listening to their envious words and looking at their expectant expressions, Fangzhou raised his chin slightly, his handsome face showing a bit of pride. "Of course it's because I'm a talented cultivator. Otherwise, how could I advance so quickly?" Hearing this, the corners of everyone's mouths twitched. They were somewhat speechless, but they had nothing to refute. That's right, if he wasn't a cultivation genius like he said, how could he have advanced again and again in such a short period of time? Among them, even Yetong, who was extremely talented, was now at the peak of the foundation establishment stage, but if he wanted to enter the golden core stage, it would take at least a few years for him to do so. But Fangzhou, from the foundation establishment stage to the golden core stage, it only took him a short year. How could they not be envious? Zhou Xian looked at the arrogant and confident handsome youth. Her heart could not help but beat faster. He was really dazzling to the point that she could not look away. Fengju? You're back? The vice house head who had managed to get rid of the elder with great difficulty asked Director Liu to send a message to the Six-Star Academy, and then hurriedly rushed over to Fengju. Seeing her surrounded by many students in the courtyard, he quickly came to her side. Vice house head. Fengju smiled and called out, Fengju, have you really decided? The vice house head looked at her. His heart was filled with mixed feelings. This time he came to the Two-Star Academy, but the most outstanding one among them stayed. He really did not know what kind of face the dean would have when he heard this news. I've decided. How can I not compensate for it? Moreover, I also think that it should be very interesting. In any case, now that I have advanced to the Golden Core stage, it is impossible for me to break through again in a short period of time. So I will take this opportunity to become a mentor. Hearing the words of the two, everyone was startled. They did not know what they were talking about. They only felt that there was no end to it. But when they heard Fengju say something about staying, about becoming a mentor, they were all stunned. What mentor? What stay? Fengju, what are you guys talking about? Xiaoyihan asked in shock. Oh, it's like this. The dean and the elders of the Two-Star Academy said that since I had entered the Jindan stage, I was not eligible to participate in the competition between the academies, so I would not be able to compete for the honor list. Then they said that I had consumed their holy land, which made me overdraft my spiritual power, so they wanted me to stay here as a mentor for a year. I thought that I would not be addicted to being a mentor, so I agreed. Speaking of this, she excitedly smiled in anticipation. Chapter 9:28. Hearing this, Fengju couldn't help but laugh. How can there be no banquet in this world that doesn't end? It's not like you have to cultivate in one place. Saying this, she patted Xiao Yihan's shoulder. The 8 great empires are the goal of cultivation. Hearing this, everyone's expression changed slightly. Of the 8 great empires, some knew, some didn't, but at this moment, their hearts were all moved, because no one wanted to be weak. She chatted with them for a while, and finally everyone dispersed, returning to their own courtyards to rest. Seeing that she had made up her mind, the vice director left without saying anything. Nie Tang and the others who were in the same courtyard as her watched her ask someone to prepare water for her bath, and also returned to their rooms to rest. Because one of her clothes had been destroyed and she only had one set left, she changed into her own clothes after bathing. It was a dazzling red dress. When she opened the door and was about to go out to find something to eat, she saw Imochen walk in with Tun Yun in her arms. Oh, whoa. Tun Yun saw its master, and with a low howl, it pounced forward, and Imochen loosened his grip, allowing it to leap out of his arms. Fengju's eyes flashed with surprise. Why are you taking care of Tun Yun? She had entrusted Tun Yun to the vice director, so why was it with him? I have nothing to do, so I'm passing the time, he said, looking at her. I heard that you want to stay as a teacher. In 1 year. She nodded and walked out of the courtyard with him. The two walked at a leisurely pace, with Tun Yun following behind them. Imochen walked, his steps light and leisurely. He didn't look at her, nor did he speak, only looking at the road in front of him, as if thinking about something. Fengju glanced at him, and saw that his entire person was faintly shrouded in an immortal aura, his white clothes fluttering in the breeze, his ink-black hair moving slightly, his expression indifferent, but his entire body exuded a kind of immortal feeling, as if he was about to step on the clouds, which made her feel very strange. He appeared at the academy because of her, and he followed to the Two-Star Academy because of her. Only, she didn't know why he did this. Was it because of the prophecy that his master, Tianji Laoren, had said? Impossible, because sometimes he looked at her with a complicated and distant gaze. Strange, I've been following you all this time? Mo Chen stopped under a tree and slightly tilted his head, a slight smile on his face, perhaps because he knew her doubts. Fengju looked at him, but be silent. Originally, I wasn't curious about who ruled the world, nor did I have any feelings about it. Thus, when my master came to find you, it was only because of my master's orders. However, The reason why I've always stayed by your side is because I want to know what kind of person the person whose fate is connected to mine is. Fengjiu, fate's connected? What do you mean? He turned around and looked at her. His gaze was deep and complicated. I was born because of you, and I will die because of you. T's be a long time T's, teat, stss. Is this the reason why he's been following me all this time? She couldn't describe the feeling in her heart. She looked at the elegant immortal in front of her and asked, when I asked you that time, you didn't say anything. Why are you saying it now? I'm leaving. Chapter 929. Fengjiu quietly looked at him, watching his white robe fluttering in the wind as he turned around and left. Her mind was still thinking about those 8 words. He was born because of her and died because of her? A person who had nothing to do with her, why would he be born because of her and die because of her? She sighed in her heart and shook her head. Since she could not understand, then she would not think about it. Things that had not happened yet, it was useless to think about it. When the time came, maybe everything would be clear. The next morning, there was a knock on her door. Fengjiu, who was sleeping soundly, did not want to get up, so she pretended not to hear it. Fengjiu? Fengjiu? I am the vice headmaster of the 2-Star Academy. Listening to these words, even if Fengjiu wanted to pretend to be asleep, she could only obediently get up, put on her coat, and open the door with a sleepy look. Vice headmaster? What's the matter? At this time, her eyes were half closed, her face was sleepy, her hair was somewhat messy, and her clothes were not neatly arranged. This appearance really made the vice headmaster of the 2-Star Academy, who was standing outside the door, scared. In the courtyard, Nietang, who was practicing martial arts in the morning, also looked back when the door opened, and when he saw her, he could not help but stare blankly. A gentle smile appeared in his eyes. It turned out that she was not honest when she slept. That messy hair. He guessed that she was sleeping under the quilt, right? And those eyes that were not open. It was almost as if she was leaning against the door with her eyes half closed to catch up on her sleep. Was she really that sleepy? This kind of her, messy, without any image to speak of. But in his eyes, everything was so straightforward, so cute, that he could not take his eyes off her. Perhaps feeling Nietang's gaze, Fengjiu, who was still in a daze with her eyes half closed, frowned, yawned, and opened her eyes, lazily glanced at Nietang, who was staring at her in the courtyard, and then asked, Is there something the vice headmaster wants from me? I brought you the information, and also arranged an immortal's cave for you according to your request, but the dean and the 2 elders said that they hope you can leave as soon as possible, and bring the people back as soon as possible. While speaking, he handed over a chinkuan bag, and said with a smile, The things are inside. You can take a look. Leave as soon as possible? Fengjiu was startled and said, Although I do not have the information to participate in the competition, but I still want to see who will win in the end. Isn't the academy competition about to begin? Haha, this year, of course, it will not be too much of a surprise. When you come back, I will tell you the results, right? This matter is more important. Otherwise, it won't be good to keep delaying it. He patted his chinkuan bag and said. Hearing this, she scratched her hair, making her messy hair even messier. All right, I understand. I will leave tomorrow at the latest, okay? She sighed, ignoring the vice headmaster's slightly twitching mouth as he stared at her messy hair, and sent him off. Then, she turned to go back into her room and closed the door, cutting off Nietang's line of sight. After returning to her room, she threw the chinkuan bag into her space and went back to sleep. She didn't wake up until noon. After washing her face and rinsing her mouth, she looked through the information of the 4 people. As she read, she was speechless. TSK. These 4 guys are not simple. Chapter 930. Closing the documents, she rested her chin on her hand and thought, how could she bring these 4 people back? If she wanted the 4 of them to listen to her, then she would have to subdue them, so that it would be more convenient to do things. But how could she subdue these 4 people? Relying on force and fists alone was definitely not enough. Her fair fingers tapped lightly on the table, making a knocking sound. Her pair of quick-witted eyes rolled around as thoughts flashed through her mind. Forget it. Let's go and talk to the Vice House headmaster first. She stood up and put the documents back into her space, straightened her red robe, and then walked out. As soon as she came out of the courtyard, she met Nie Tang in the courtyard, and seeing him staring at her, she raised her eyebrows, raised her chin, snorted, and walked out. Nie Tang watched as she lifted her chin and left with her hands behind her back. He couldn't help but curl his lips into a faint smile. However, before the smile could spread, he retracted it. He looked at the figure that was already far away and slowly lowered his gaze. If he did not use such a strong method, if he did not use such an overbearing method, would he still have a chance? Whether he would have a chance or not, he did not know. But he knew that if he did not do that, even if she did not become his woman, she would not hate him so much. Hate. Thinking of these two words, his whole body's aura became as cold as frost, and his heart shrunk as a faint trace of pain that could not be ignored. Being hated by the person you love, this feeling was really not good. On the other side, Feng Jiu came to the Vice House headmaster and the two mentors and told them that he would be leaving tomorrow to do something. You are leaving tomorrow? Are you not going to stay and watch the competition? Director Liu was somewhat surprised, although Feng Jiu's qualification to participate in the competition was taken away. But these few academies' competition should be very intense with Nie Tang and the others. But originally they thought that the final winner would be Feng Jiu, but now they were not sure. No, I was thinking that by the time I returned to the Two-Star Academy, you would have already left, so today I came to tell you about it. She smiled, and looked at the Vice House headmaster who was frowning and smiled. Vice House headmaster, I will return to the Six-Star Academy. It should be after a year. I have to go back and have a look. I have a lot of friends there. There is also Xiao He who is guarding the Immortals Cave. Vice House headmaster, I will not go back. You cannot let people bully my Xiao He. You can rest assured. No one will touch your cave. It will be kept for you. As for that big black bear of yours, Cough, I will get people to take care of it. The Vice Academy head sighed, looked at her and said, Since you want to stay, then I will give you some advice. You do not have any backing here, nor do you have any influence, so when you go out, you have to be careful. Moreover, the students of the Two-Star Academy, each one of them is a descendant of a powerful family, so you should not offend them, otherwise it would not be good for you. I know. She nodded with a smile. Don't worry, I know what to do. She had always been a person who would not offend others if they did not offend her, but if someone offended her, she was not a person who would blindly back down. Chapter 931. Well, he said goodbye to me, and said that he was leaving. She nodded, her eyes flashing. She did not expect that he would say that he was leaving. Yesterday when she went back, she immediately fell asleep, and did not send him off. She really felt apologetic. I think he also told you about it. The Vice Dean looked at her and said, Since you are leaving tomorrow, you can go and do your own things. Good, then I will go first. She replied, and then turned around to leave. She went to Yijing's place, and after saying goodbye to her, she returned to the courtyard and said goodbye to Xiao Yihan, and then simply packed up the things in her room and turned around to leave the courtyard and went towards the immortal cave that the Two-Star Academy had prepared for her. The inter-school competition hadn't started yet, so there were many students who hadn't seen Feng Jiu before. They didn't even know who she was. Therefore, when she walked through the school in a red dress, there were students whispering about her. Who is that boy? How come he is not wearing the uniform of the academy? Is he a relative of one of the teachers? I don't know if he is a relative, but that boy's bearing is quite good. Could he be a student from another academy? Impossible. The students from other academies have to wear the uniform of our academy. If that boy is from another academy, he certainly would not dare to not wear the uniform. Also, no one in the academy would dare to not wear the uniform. I guess that he is a relative of one of the teachers who came to visit. What relative? He was originally a student of a Six-Star Academy, but he advanced in the sacred land of the secret realm, I don't know how he became a teacher of our academy, and it was also the request of the dean and the two elders." Hearing these words, the students who were talking turned around and saw a teacher standing not far away, with his hands behind his back, staring at the red figure sitting on the flying feather, and said in a strange tone, "He is a student of a 6-star academy? Is that so? Letting a student of a 6-star academy be our teacher? Who made this decision? This is too absurd. We are all dignified 2-star academy students, which one of us is a heaven's pride. But we actually let a student of a 6-star academy be our teacher? Doesn't this mean that a student of a 6-star academy can be our teacher? If people knew about this, how can we raise our heads in the future?" This is the decision of the dean and the two elders. The instructor glanced at them. "The news hasn't been released yet. If you have any objections or are dissatisfied, you can go to the dean. I believe the dean will give you a reasonable explanation." "Yes, let's go to the dean. How can we let a student from a 6-star academy be our mentor? This is too much of a slap to the face." "That's right. What qualifications does a student from a 6-star academy have to be our mentor?" We refused to accept this. Due to the fact that the teacher had exposed the news, the students were all furious and felt that they had been humiliated. They spread the news to each other, and in less than an hour, almost all the students in the academy knew about this matter. They all ran to the main peak, wanting to find the dean to clarify the matter. On the other side, Fangjiu had already moved into her Immortal's Cave. In addition to the Immortal's Cave's original array formation, she had also set up another array formation around her. Even if someone came to the mountain where she lived, they would not be able to enter her boundary. Chapter 932. However, before she could get close, the students gathered at the foot of the main peak noticed her. "Look, there. He's over there." In an instant, almost everyone turned to look at her. Their eyes were filled with anger, as if she had done something that would incur the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of men. "What's going on?" She raised an eyebrow. Sitting on the flying feather, she slowly flew over their heads, intending to go to the ovens to find something to eat. However, at that moment, someone picked up a stone and threw it at her. "Kill him. How can a student from a 6-star academy be our instructor?" "That's right. Kill him. I heard that the cultivation Holy Land's spiritual power was overdrawn by him. He caused us to be unable to cultivate for several years. He cut off our cultivation resources. He's not human. He's courting death. Kick him out." In an instant, one stone after another was thrown up from below. Because the students below were all cultivators, the height and strength of the stones were not just for fun. Fangjia watched as the stones rained down. Because she was caught off guard, a stone hit her foot. The pain made her furious. With a whoosh, she flew up into the air on the flying feather, glaring at the crowd below. "You've gone too far. How dare you throw stones at me? Do you have any respect for your elders?" It would have been better if she hadn't said anything. Now that she did, in addition to throwing stones, some even turned around and flew at her on their swords. Seeing the stones and flying swords coming at her, she coldly snorted. "Since you don't have any respect for your elders, I'll teach you a lesson." As soon as her voice fell, she stood on top of the flying feather sword. With a wave of her sleeve, it seemed as if there was powder floating down from the sky, all the way from the foot of the mountain to the top, not letting a single one escape. Then, with a wave of her hand, the two flying swords that were attacking her stabbed into the crotches of the two flying sword students. The two students only felt a sharp chi blade coming at them. A cold light flashed in front of their eyes, and they felt a chill between their legs. When they looked down, they were so scared that they broke out in a cold sweat. The sword chi had cut a large hole in the crotch area of their pants. Even their pants had been cut open. If the wound had been any deeper, their genitals would have been cut off as well. The two sucked in a breath of cold air and instinctively clamped their legs together. Their faces were pale as they looked at the red figure in the sky. They really didn't know whether to thank him for showing mercy or say that he was too ruthless. "Hiss. It's so itchy. What's going on? Why is it so itchy?" "Me too. My whole body is itchy." What's going on? Ah, it's itchy. Hearing that the people below had stopped throwing stones and were scratching their heads, Fengjiu snorted and watched calmly. Go against her? Wasn't this asking for a beating? On the main peak, the principal and the vice principal heard the commotion and came out to take a look. Seeing the students of the academy lined up from the main peak all the way to the foot of the mountain, they couldn't help but stare blankly for a moment before shouting in a deep voice, "What's going on? What are you all crowding around here for?" His voice, which contained spiritual energy, spread through the air and clearly entered the ears of the students on the mountain and at the foot of the mountain. At this time, the crowd had already forgotten that they had been shouting to chase Fengjiu out. They were just scratching their itches and cursing at the same time. "Fengjiu, why are you here?" The principal saw Fengjiu in the air and asked. Chapter 933. Listening to Fengjiu's aggrieved words, the dean and the vice headmaster's mouths twitched. In this short period of contact, they already knew that this Fengjiu was not the type of person to suffer losses. How could he be bullied? No one would believe it if they said it out loud. Glancing at the students on the mountain, the dean helplessly asked, "What did you do to them?" Hearing this, how could the people who were scratching their skin not know that this was Fengjiu's doing? So, one by one, they angrily cursed, "Fengjiu, you actually used medicine. Fengjiu, you are despicable. You used medicine on them?" The dean was speechless. Such a large group of people. He actually sprinkled medicine on them? Where did he get the medicine from? Of course, I have to teach them a lesson for not respecting their teachers. It's just that teaching them one by one is too time-consuming. I'll just make them itch for 4 hours. Don't worry, they won't die. She smiled as she stared at the students below. "Quickly give us the antidote. Give us the antidote." Hearing this, she chuckled. "I am really sorry. I don't have the antidote for this thing, but you can find the Academy's doctors to cure it. Of course, the premise is that they can cure it." Listening to the confidence in his words, as well as looking at his arrogant and proud face, the dean and the vice headmaster could not help but look at each other. Their minds coincidentally remembered the warning of the vice headmaster of the 6-star academy. He said it was not that he did not want Fengjiu to stay, but he was afraid that if Fengjiu stayed, it would cause them big trouble in the future. He was afraid that in the future, the atmosphere of the 2-star academy would be foul, and he was afraid that they would regret it in the future. At that time, they thought that he just did not want such a heaven's pride to stay, but today, they suddenly had a bad premonition. "Fengjiu, you?" Before the dean could finish his words, he saw the youth standing on the flying feather flick his sleeves. With a smile on his face, he asked, "Dean, I want to find something to eat. Where is the 2-star academy's ovens?" Over there. However, as soon as the words left his mouth, he gaped in shock. Just when he was about to say something, Fengjiu waved his hand, then stepped onto a flying feather and shot off in the direction of the ovens. Before he could say anything, the words were stuck in his throat. The dean sighed helplessly as he looked at the students who were complaining about the itch. He turned to the vice dean beside him and said, "Go and take a look at the students. Let the students and instructors from Yao Peak take a look at them." As he spoke, he shook his head and turned to leave. Seeing this, the vice headmaster had no choice but to go and check on the students. As for Fengjiu, as soon as she arrived at the ovens, she could smell the delicious aroma wafting out from within. She couldn't stop herself from drooling. However, before she could even get close, she was stopped by the 2 guards guarding the ovens. The ovens is an important place. If you're bored, you're not allowed to enter. "I'm not an idler. I'm a teacher." She took out the jade medallion that represented her status as a teacher and waved it in front of the 2 guards. When she saw the astonished expressions on their faces, she smiled. "The dean sent me here to bring the food for him, and the vice dean. Why would an instructor come here to bring food?" The 2 guards asked suspiciously. "Normally, we bring food to them." However, they couldn't be wrong about the identity medallion of an instructor. Chapter 934. Seeing this, The two men looked at each other and nodded. One of them turned around and walked in. Not long after, he came out with 2 food baskets. This is for the principal and the vice headmaster. Okay, thank you. She smiled and squinted her eyes. Carrying the 2 food baskets, she turned around and left. Seeing Fengju leave, the 2 men shook their heads and did not think much about it. They continued to guard the entrance and did not let anyone else come near. Fengju carried the 2 food baskets back to the Immortal's cave. When he opened the food baskets, his eyes lit up. Sure enough, the principal and the vice headmaster's food is really good. TSK. This 2-star academy's food is really good. Even in the 6-star academy, no one eats this well. What a rich taste of ginseng. Is this 100-year ginseng stewed with black spirit chicken? It is said that black spirit chicken is the best of the best. It is very nutritious. As she spoke, she took a spoon and drank a bowl of soup. In the end, she directly rolled up her sleeves and ate. After about half an hour, she was full and saw that there was still a lot left. She gave some to the 2 beasts, Tun Yun and Lao Bai, to eat. Phew, I'm so full. She touched her belly and walked out of the Immortal's cave. Looking at the sky, she thought about it. She would leave tomorrow and leave today as well. Why not leave now? After making up her mind, she went back to the Immortal's cave and took Tun Yun with her. Taking advantage of the night, she left the academy. As for this day, the principal and the vice headmaster were busy with the affairs of the students. However, they saw that tonight's dinner had not been delivered yet. They could not help but frown. They sent someone to hurry up, but the result made them very surprised. Fengju, that brat. The principal exhaled and helplessly cursed. The vice headmaster beside him also shook his head and smiled. I heard the guard report that Fengju went out. It's good that he left. That brat will really cause trouble if he stays in the academy. Sigh. I can only hope that he really has some ability to bring those 4 people back. Several days later, in a forest on the outskirts of the imperial city of the Qing Kingdom, one of the second-tier countries, over 100 palace guards stood guard around the forest with swords hanging from their waists, not allowing anyone to approach. Not only that, but there was also a restriction placed by a nascent soul cultivator that prohibited flying. A purple-robed youth sat atop a flaming lion with his chin raised. The lion's feet were covered in flames, and with each step it took, the flames burned a footprint on the ground. It was a flame lion at the peak of the Saint Beast realm. It was covered in armor and exuded a majestic and domineering aura. However, it was as docile as a cat when it was ridden by the young man. As for that young man, although he had an air of nobility, he didn't have a handsome face. What he had was a chubby baby face. He looked harmless, but the light that occasionally flashed through his eyes would cause one's heart to tremble. 10th Prince, the prisoners on death row have been escorted over. A middle-aged man beside him said respectfully. With a wave of his hand, a group of imperial guards escorted 10 death row prisoners forward. The baby-faced youth stared at them for a long time, then said, I will give you all a chance to live. When they heard this, the 10 hearts trembled, but they did not say anything. They just stared at the young man in front of them. When they were locked up in the death row prison, they knew that they had no choice but to die. Now, he actually said that he would give them a chance to live, regardless of whether it was true or not. It made their hearts beat rapidly. Chapter 935. The youth smiled, revealing 2 small dimples on his cheeks. His eyes sparkled with excitement as he said, This is a game called Ghosts Are Here. You've never played it before, have you? This humble prince will be the ghost. If you can hide well and avoid being caught by the ghost, you can naturally live. If the ghost catches you, this humble prince doesn't need to tell you what the outcome will be, right? The 10 people were startled, unable to believe what they had just heard. They had thought that they were brought out to be executed. They never thought that the 10th prince would bring them here to play a game called Ghosts Are Here. That was a game for children. Now, they actually had to play with him? As long as we don't get caught, we can live? One of the prisoners on death row asked incredulously. He couldn't believe that such a way out was placed in front of them. That's right. As long as you don't get caught by the ghost, of course you can live. The young man happily stared at the 10 people and memorized their faces. In the next moment, he pulled out the sword hanging from his waist and with a swoosh, he untied the ropes on their bodies. All right, the game has begun. You guys should quickly run away. I won't look at you. I'll count to 100 and it'll begin. As he spoke, he leaned forward childishly and leaned on the flaming lion's body. He even used his hand to block his line of sight. 1, 2, 5. Hearing the voice counting, the 10 people quivered and abruptly ran in several directions. In a short while, they had disappeared without a trace. The guards behind the young man looked straight ahead, as if they were already used to the young man's absurd behavior. Each of them stood at a distance and listened to the young man count while lying on the flaming lion. However, when he counted to 30, his voice stopped. The youth on the flaming lion raised his head and narrowed his eyes. He stared in several directions and revealed a strange smile. Playing ghosts during the day? Where's the fun in that? It's more exciting when it's dark. As he spoke, he lazily stretched his back, intending to let the people who were hiding wait until they were frightened out of their wits before he went out to search. However, at that moment, he faintly smelled a fragrance. Which one of you brought barbecued meat? Why is it so fragrant? The youth turned around and glanced at the people behind him. In reply to the 10th prince, we didn't bring any. Hearing this, the youth patted the flaming lion's head and walked forward, saying, all of you wait here. Don't run around without my orders.
Yes.
The imperial guards replied respectfully as they watched him ride the flame lion into the palace. Is it really all right if we don't send people to follow them? Someone asked. How dare you disobey the 10th prince? If you have the guts, go ahead. The other person said as he sat down and waited. However, not long after he sat down, he really smelled the aroma of meat. He couldn't help but ask, who is barbecuing meat here? Those 10 prisoners on death row all thought that they had too little time to escape, so they definitely wouldn't do this. Could it be that there are other people in this forest? Thinking of this possibility, the middle-aged man couldn't help but frown as he looked worriedly in the direction the youth had left. When the youth followed the scent, he saw a handsome red-clothed youth sitting cross-legged under a large tree. He was tearing up something and eating it. In front of the youth was a pile of smashed soil, and on the soil was a fragrant chicken. The chicken had its legs torn off. Just the smell alone made him want to pounce on it. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.